Hello and welcome to Art Block, the show where we talk about art and how it's made. I'm your host Spirit, and today I'll be sharing some of my stories of my, experiences as an artist. Let's go. First story comes from a relatively recent time. I was playing a background character in a play called Legally Blonde. You know, the one with the lawyers and the don't judge a book by its cover moral. Anyways, I was sitting in the audience because I was part of the court ensemble, and they were running a part of the jail scene with Brooke Wyndham. So I'm just sitting there with my friend, bored out of my mind because the building's Wi-Fi sucked, and I had the random thought. Both of us like art and character design, so why not pull up an art prompt and then see what we come up with? So I asked my friend if she wanted to draw an art prompt with me. She said yes, so I really quickly ran over to my backpack and grabbed my halftone sketchbook. We sat down and looked up some art prompts on artprompts.org. Great website, by the way. Free shout out if you're looking for ideas for what to draw. First prompt was to simply design our interpretation of a chimera. You know, the creature from Greek mythology that's made up of a lion, goat, and a snake? Anyways, we sat there for about 15 minutes drawing, and right as we finished the prompt, one of my other friends, we'll call her Lavender for now. Remember her because she'll be important later in the video. Anywho, Lavender walked over and asked us what we were doing, and we both responded, "We're doing an art prompt." And all three of us, being art nerds, we were like, "Hey, we all like to draw, let's do another art prompt together." So Lavender sat down next to me in the audience, and we searched up another prompt. While we were in the middle of drawing the prompt, another one of my friends, who we'll call Enid because that was the role she was playing in the play, walked over and asked us what we were doing. We replied with, "We're drawing an art prompt," and offered to let her join. So, long story short, what started off as a simple time killer ended up turning into a little bonding experience for me and my friends. Also gonna give a little shout out to any of my fellow theater peeps out there who might be watching. You guys are awesome. Our second story comes from my AP art class in my senior year of high school. One thing to know about the AP art program is that you'll end up having to do an evaluation on your artwork about halfway through the year in order to get an idea of where to go forward on the project. So, I walked into class one day and I looked around to see easels posted around the room. When I asked what was going on, I heard 3 words from one of my classmates which immediately changed my mood. AP Evaluation Day. As soon as I heard those 3 words, my mind went into a mental state of panic. I had almost no work for my concentration to show off, and I would have to present what I did have. So I rushed over to my drawer where I kept my traditional work and pulled out what I could. The first person began explaining their concentration, and I sat there, contemplating what I was going to say. So the thing with concentrations is that you're supposed to have a theme, and my plan was to discuss my concentration focusing on character consistency and storytelling. See, my concentration was supposed to follow little vignettes following a dog through his daily life. However, when it came to presenting, I only had about 5 pieces of the required 8 at the time. And I also happened to have some other stuff from my drawer which I was using as padding to make it look like I was being at least a little productive. When it came to my turn to talk about my concentration, I completely blew it. I'm not sure if it was because I was under pressure or didn't exactly know what I wanted to say, but long story short, the way that I described it made it seem like I had 2 projects going on at once. But in my defense, I was a sleep-deprived, ultra-stressed student who is barely capable of speech or any comprehension in general. I think what made it worse was that my art teacher was sitting there in the corner shaking her head, giving me a look of disapproval as I attempted to explain the intentionally stylistic choice of drawing a corgi in a Disney-esque style. And to give you all a bit of context, my art teacher had frequently pointed out that, and I'm paraphrasing here, you should never draw cartoons because an employer will never take any form of stylistic work. What added insult to injury was that one of the evaluating teachers actually asked me beforehand what my concentration was about, and I not only managed to summarize it, but I was also able to explain what was going on in a brief and easy manner. Once again, an example of how my brain has lost all of its ability to function under pressure. The third and final story involves Lavender. Now, the first time I properly met Lavender, I was doing some volunteer work for my school by repairing computers. Yes, despite being the artsy nerd that I am, I'm actually a computer repair technician. Anyways, I was repairing some computers and demoing one of my tablets when Lavender came over to my table. She was with a friend and decided to ask if she could use my tablet to draw something at the table. Now, to give some context, I was allowing the kids visiting the school to use my old Wacom Intuos tablet to try out digital art, since the school was trying to get more kids into the digital design program. And as a person who's been doing digital art for almost 5 years, I wanted to encourage them to branch out a little bit. One of my bandmates who was helping me at the table had to get up and go elsewhere, so I decided to take over her spot temporarily while Lavender and her friend were trying out the drawing tablet. Eventually a line started to form at the table, and I had to ask Lavender to let the other kids use the tablet. When I looked down at the computer screen, I saw that she had drawn a My Little Pony OC. Me being a brony at the time, well, still somewhat am, I mentioned that I was actually a part of the online brony analysis community on YouTube. Now, since I never really show my face on YouTube, I politely mentioned my channel name since I would understand her not recognizing me by my voice. Unfortunately, before we were able to continue discussing the matter, Lavender and her friend had to move on to the next section of the event. A few months later, I was doing an independent project over at one of the other schools in my county. In the project, I sought out a few of my fellow students to discuss topics they were interested in to help some of the students at the other school to start thinking about careers. That particular day, I had driven over to the school with another bandmate of mine who was going to discuss video and film production. The two of us spent about 10 or so minutes setting up the computer and just chatting until the bell rang. An announcement had been previously sent out during the students' break time, and before we knew it, we had a group of about 20 students sitting in the conference room with us, and one of them happened to be Lavender. The presentation went on as planned. My bandmate discussed the ins and outs of filmmaking, with me occasionally chiming in. The presentation ends, and the students start heading out the door. Lavender comes up to me and mentions that she watches my YouTube videos and was a fan of my work. However, before I was able to strike up a conversation, she started walking out of the room. Anywho, I called her back into the conference room, and we had a normal chat about YouTube and art. Eventually, we had to dismiss Lavender back to class. I said goodbye and said we could chat more since I would be coming back for more sessions. I turned to my bandmate and he asked what that was about. I explained that I had a YouTube account with about 1.6k subscribers at the time, and that Lavender had somehow come across it at some point. My boss, as I'll call him, also asked about it, and from that day forth, I was known as that one YouTube nerd. Lavender and I ended up becoming friends afterwards. We both share a love for art and character design, and meeting someone who's a fan of my work in real life was just a big motivator to keep me going with my work. As a way to end off this video, I'd like to say a big thank you to everyone who's supported me over these past 4 years of YouTube. Whether you're an old subscriber who's stuck around, or a new person who just happened to come across this video, thank you for your viewership and your support of this channel. If you guys liked this video, please consider subscribing and sharing this around. It supports me, and it's practically free. Also be sure to check me out on Twitter and DeviantArt, where I post art and chat with you guys outside of the show. Want to support the show and my work? Check me out on Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month you can receive perks like access to tutorials and resources. Once again, thank you all so much for watching. I'm Spirit, and I'll see you next time.